Bill Carroll of Zinni 62 Sports Media, and I'm going to be delving a little more deeply and a little more in detail into the wide receiver class, and then I'll be done with the wide receiver class, almost done. Actually, I'll do one more that's really just on the jump ball and red zone specialist, and those who are trying to win, to quote my professor Jennifer Carawan, major, retired from Military Science 221. Shout out to anybody else who was in ROTC back in the day. That the difference between a war of position and war of maneuver, right? Well, these receivers are trying to win a war of position, but I'm going to talk about the receivers who can do both, who have enough size, usually about 6'2", 6'3", not quite 6'4", because that usually gets into that other group I'm talking about, but from, I'll say 6'1" and a half on up to about 6'3", but still have good speed. And I'm going to roll through those. And these are the ones that run 4.45 or under. So that means they can play essentially maybe any of the positions. So the ones that are probably the most attractive to NFL teams. I'm going to start with one of the more highly discussed of them, in Alec Pierce. And I don't know if it's because he's white or because he didn't run a lot of the sort of classic go and deep fades, though he did run some post and some deep fades. He didn't run, he wasn't just running deep all the time. He worked the middle of the field a great deal because he has size at 6'3" and an eighth, 211 pounds. He's also a really good blocker. He had a 4.41 40, which I think surprised some people, but once again, it's a fast track. So he's probably more like a 4.47, 4.48 in a quote-unquote normal combine year, which is still really good for a guy his size. 7.133 count for a tall guy, not bad. 4.28 short shuttle, 40.5-inch vertical. Once again, former terrific volleyball player, so that didn't shock me. And a 10.9 broad. But what kind of player will he be? I still think he's more of a Z than an X at the next level, and maybe even a power slot. And you look at the career, and once again, it's not just because he's white, and not just because he can jump, because I think Thielen was about a 38-inch vertical guy. But Thielen sort of had to fight through some of the same sort of misunderstandings of what kind of player he was. Much better athlete than whatever reason than people seem to think. And I don't know if it's because he's white, but people seem to not realize he was a great athlete. Now I guess they had to wake up to that fact. And Justin Ross, of course, was the guy who was highly touted coming into Clemson. Came in at 6'3" and 5'8". So he's a little taller than I was planning to really deal with. He's almost in the tree trunks. He's almost up there with this red zone red zone and jump ball guys, but he's not really one of those. Though he can do it, that's not really the best part of his game. So I'm going to go ahead and lump him together with these guys, with George Pickens and others, who are taller but still can play all of the positions. Z, X, Y, could be even power slot. Ross still had a good career, but nothing quite like what people were imagining. People were talking about A.J. Green, maybe not quite Julio Jones, but top level, elite level production was expected at the college level. He had a good career, like I said, but nothing like expectation. Injury was part of it. He's still not 100%, wasn't able to do a full workout. Did 11 reps on the bench. It was measured, and that was it for him. I still think he'd be a very good player. Once again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, probably more a Z than an X, but we shall see. George Pickens is the one that lately has probably gotten the most attention, and people are starting to sort of salivate over him. 6'3" and a quarter, 195. Once again, a guy who's battled injury. A little smaller than, not average. I mean, for his size, not really big hands. I mean, they're still 8 3/4, which is plenty big. But when a guy's 6'3" and a half, you sort of think they might be closer to 9 or even up above 9. I mean, he's close to 9, but we're talking about 9, 9.5, heading towards 10, usually a guy that size. Ran a 4.47, 33-inch vertical, which is decent but not amazing, 10.5 broad. Skipped, for whatever reason, the agilities, which I think would have been very instructive. Another guy who sort of fits into that same category is Braylon Sand. Well, no, actually, not really so much him. I covered him already. Sorry, it's Makai Polk is the guy I wanted to pick up next. And Polk is a guy who's really been more of a possession type. But I think, once again, probably a Z. But I think he can also, I think his business might be becoming a power slot at the next level. 4.36 shuttle, 4.59 40. 31-inch vertical, which is not super exciting. But he'd come in at 6'3" and an eighth and 195. Good route runner, long arms, decent sized hands, 9.5. But mostly a guy who people think of as sort of, lumped in together with the Keenan Allens of the world. He's not quite that polished and a little bit bigger. But I think he could have a really solid career. Maybe not quite Keenan, Allen level, but a really good career. And a guy that is sort of the other end of the spectrum because he's seen as a speed guy, though I think he'd do more than that, is Romeo Doubs, who is just a shade under 6'2", came in at 6'1" and 7/8, 201 pounds. I really wish he'd done a full workout at the combine because I think he would have been impressive. And once again, it's a fast track. I can understand why guys, if they don't feel 100% or aren't ready or whatever, don't do it. But I think it would have been a good day for him. But he has enough speed, I think. I'm mentioning with guys that run fast because I think he's going to run fast. So the guys are more pure possession guys. I'm not going to get into them until I get to the final video regarding the receiver position. Another guy that I think runs fast enough to play any of the positions, has good size, and I'm a big fan. I was a big fan before this, and obviously he had a great combine. He led, I think, all the receivers with 20 bench reps and beat out a decent number of the tight ends. 6'3.5", 214 pounds, 4.42, which even if you want to say you will put on the fast track tax and say it's 4.48, I'm still happy with that. 40-inch vertical. That means that even though he's 6'3.5", he plays like 6'5", 6'6", can run well, can play any of the positions. I think if you're talking about other than, say, Christian Watson, of all of the FCS receivers, the best one who has the best chance to be a star, not just a starter, not just a player, but maybe even a star receiver, might be Weston. He needs to go to the right situation. He'll need a couple of years to settle in, but I could see it happening for him a couple of years down the road. He has all of the physical components that you want, and he's a worker, and he's a good blocker. Like, it's hard to find a place where you can say, oh, he's bad at this, right? Because there's no thing where there's really a bad at this. You just point to it. Obviously, Drake London wasn't able to work out, and he's sort of a mix between the jump ball receiver, right? Because he's obviously a basketball guy, 6'3" and 7'8", so almost 6'4", just below the sort of the threshold that I was sort of establishing to talk about. But I'll mention him briefly. He, I think, will be an absolute stud. Not quite Mike Williams, because Mike Williams was a little more special in terms of straight line speed, I think, than Drake London is. But when we finally get to see him run at his pro day, I'm expecting him to be somewhere in the low 4.5s, which is still plenty for a guy his size. He does almost everything well. A little feisty, a little fiery. Has a little bit of anger to his game. Once again, a guy who plays above the rim, but is a good enough route runner that he can do all the stuff you need him to do sort of below the rim as well. And then I want to sort of finish off with one of the guys that is another guy who sort of could be multiple things to multiple people. Now, Eric Ezekama didn't, once again, do a full workout. He did, however, do the agilities, or at least one of them that so many people skipped. 4.38 short shuttle, which is not setting the world on fire exactly, but he's a bigger guy at 6'1" and 7/8, 209 pounds, 36.5-inch vertical, and a 10.6 broad. Obviously, we're going to have to wait on his 40. My guess is it's going to be somewhere in the 4.5s. If it's the low 4.5s, then that still means he can play any of the positions, X, Y, or Z. If he's in the high 4.5s or even in the 4.6s, now you're looking most likely at a person who's going to be playing in the slot, as a power slot, bigger slot, or as your possession Z, in like the Jason Avant, for those who remember him, kind of role, that kind of role. So that takes care of the sort of, middle place, right, between the guards and the big forwards, power forwards, or whatever, in terms of at the wide receiver position. The last video will cover those big-bodied receivers who are mostly on the slower side.